I did not shout. I simply let truth become word in the Jesus diary, my diary. Today was quiet, not because nothing happened, but because everything did. The sky was still blue. The earth still turned. My friends still spoke without knowing the weight of their words. But something in the wind had changed. Not loud, not obvious, just heavier. There are moments when the world doesn't notice, but heaven listens closely. Today was one of them. I was sitting among those I loved, and yet I felt alone, not in absence, but in knowing. The kind of knowing that presses against your ribs like an invisible weight. The kind of knowing that makes every sound sharper, every silence deeper. Then I heard it. A voice. A sentence. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't dramatic. But it carried thunder. A simple phrase, spoken without understanding, struck my heart harder than any stone. It was a human truth wrapped in divine consequence. And the moment it reached me, I knew this would be the sound that would haunt the hours before the cross. Not the hammer, not the crowd. These words, they shook me. Not because they were cruel, but because they were honest. Because they carried the innocence of someone who didn't yet see the storm they were standing in. And as the sky prepared to turn dark, my soul did too. But I stayed quiet. I listened. Because love doesn't interrupt pain, it absorbs it. If these words stirred something in your soul, if you've ever heard something you couldn't unhear, touch this message with a like. Let be your way of saying, I'm listening too. The air was thick, not with dust or heat, but with something unspoken. A stillness settled over the earth like a warning. Not loud, not violent, just quiet enough to make the silence feel alive. The olive trees swayed gently, as if they, too, sensed something sacred approaching. The sky above was clear, but I could feel the darkness waiting. Not in the clouds, in the hearts of men, in the weight of moments not yet lived. It wasn't the sun that was dimming, it was hope. The disciples moved around me with the calm of routine. Plates passed, questions whispered, smiles exchanged, but their peace did not reach me. Because I knew what they could not yet feel. That time was folding in on itself, that the countdown to surrender had already begun. Every sound felt distant, even though it was near. A cup placed on stone, the soft laughter of a brother, the wind nudging a curtain, and beneath it all that phrase, that voice, that moment that shook me before the world even noticed the trembling. It wasn't what they saw that moved me, it was what they missed, and I sat there, surrounded by familiar faces, holding a grief they couldn't yet name, holding a love they didn't yet understand. My heart was already in Gethsemane, my spirit already beneath the weight of what must come. But my body remained at the table, still silent, listening to the voices of men who would sleep through agony and speak words they didn't know would pierce eternity. That was the room. That was the moment. The calm before everything broke. He was there, not at the edge of the road, but at the edge of my heart. John, the quiet one, the one the world barely noticed, but I always did. He leaned against me like a child leans into peace, unaware of the storm waiting behind the stars. His head on my shoulder, his breath steady, his spirit untouched by what I already knew. And I held him, not with my arms, but with my silence. Because even love that is seen cannot stop what is coming. I looked across the table at the others. So much devotion, so much blindness. Their loyalty shouted, but their spirits whispered doubt. Not out of rebellion, but fragility. I didn't blame them. I loved them for it. Because what they could not carry, I would. Still, something inside me wrestled. Not with fear, but with the weight of foreknowledge. Knowing that love could not protect them from the night. Knowing that they would fall asleep when I needed them most. That one would betray, that another would deny, and that even John, though faithful, could not follow me past the veil of agony. It's a strange kind of pain to be surrounded by love and still feel utterly alone in your knowing. That was my dilemma, to stay present with them, while my soul was already walking into the shadows alone. To smile at the table with a tear pressed behind my silence. To speak gently while thunder gathered in my chest. And still I stayed, not because they understood me, but because I loved them anyway. I turned my face slightly, just enough to hear him better. The words were soft, almost lost beneath the sound of laughter and shifting plates. But not to me. To me, they thundered. I would never leave you. A simple sentence. A declaration of loyalty, spoken from lips that would soon go silent in fear. And in that moment, something inside me cracked. Not in anger, not in disappointment, but in sorrow deeper than sound. Because I believed him, not his promise, his heart. The heart that wanted so badly to be strong, to stand, to carry me if needed, to fight for me if asked. That heart was pure, but it was not ready. And hearing those words, knowing what they would become in just a few hours, that shook me. Not the betrayal, not the denial, but the truth that even the ones who love you the most can break under the weight of darkness. I felt the sky lean forward, as if creation itself held its breath. As if the stars, still hidden behind daylight, already mourned what was coming. And I sat there, still, silent, not because I didn't feel the pain, but because I had chosen to carry it. Love is not proven in miracles. It's proven in moments like this, when you hold someone's hope knowing it will fall and you don't let go. When you hear the promise that won't survive the night and you cherish it anyway. That is what I did. I let his words fall into me like stones in a well. Deep, echoing, final. I smiled, not because it didn't hurt, but because I wanted him to remember my face when he remembered his failure. That even then, I loved him, even knowing, even hurting, even hearing what I knew would become silence and denial. And something changed in me, not in my purpose, but in my posture. I stopped waiting to be understood, and I embraced a role no one could take from me. The lamb who listens. The savior who absorbs, the friend who stays, even when everyone else will run. Because that's what love does. It stays in the room, even when the sky begins to darken. It stays when hearts start to close. It stays when the shaking begins. That is when love is most itself. And so I stayed. I stayed with the ones who would forget me. I stayed with the words that would soon be broken. I stayed with the silence that would soon be betrayal. Because love doesn't leave when the truth hurts. It leans in closer. And maybe that's what shook me the most. Not the coming pain, but the depth of my own love. A love that didn't need to be returned to remain true. A love that didn't need to be promised to remain present. A love that is still reaching, even now. If these words stirred something inside you, if you've ever made promises you couldn't keep, or felt the distance between who you were and who you long to be, subscribe. Not just to this diary, but to the mercy that holds your heart steady even when the sky turns dark. Because love is still listening. And on this day, I learned something not written in the scrolls. I learned that pain doesn't always arrive with violence or cries. It can come as a whisper that slips quietly between words meant to comfort. A promise made with trembling sincerity. A sentence built on love, but not yet shaped by the weight of fire. And in that whisper, I found something holy. It wasn't the words that broke me. It was the heart behind them. A heart that loved me deeply, but didn't yet know how much love costs. A heart that believed it could stand strong in the storm, until the storm arrived. That's when I understood something my father had always known. Love isn't proved by strength. It's revealed in weakness. Because weakness is not a flaw in love. It's the door through which grace enters. Only those who know they can fall will ever truly need to be caught. And I saw that grace is not for the perfect, but for the honest. For the ones who say, I will never leave you, and still do, but want to come back. That day, I realized my purpose wasn't to walk beside those who never fail. It was to carry the fragile, to hold close the ones who collapse under their own expectations, to walk not ahead of them, but with them, even in their undoing. That is the mystery of divine love. It doesn't harden when wounded. It doesn't grow cold when disappointed. It stays soft enough to listen, especially when the words begin to hurt. So today, I didn't discover pain. I already knew pain, but I did discover mercy. A mercy that doesn't require explanation. A mercy that hears the silence between the words. A mercy that answers failure not with punishment, but with presence. And still says, I'm not leaving, Today I was not pierced by nails, but by words. Words spoken with love, destined to break under pressure. And yet, I held them close. I did not stop the promise. I did not silence the devotion. I let it fall into the silence between us, like a fragile flower placed at the edge of a grave. Because even broken vows are proof of longing, and longing is sacred. Tonight, I learned that love does not survive because it is strong. It survives because it stays, even when it shakes. And maybe that is the true miracle. Not walking on water, not calming storms, but choosing to listen when the words ache. Choosing to stay when the light begins to fade. I didn't save anyone tonight, but I remember why I came. I came for the trembling. The ones who love me and still run. The ones who speak with fire and collapse in shadow. The ones whose voices once declared strength, but now whisper, I failed. If you're one of them, this page is for you. I still hear you, and I still choose to stay. Now, let me ask you, what was the last thing you said to me that still echoes in your soul? Would you say it again, knowing I never stopped listening? I said nothing. I just let that moment become a word in my Jesus diary. If this page in my diary touched you, don't keep it hidden. Someone close to you may be carrying words they regret, or silence they don't know how to break. Share this moment, not for numbers, but for hearts. Let it find someone in the dark before their sky turns black. And before you leave, look, there's another moment waiting. A voice still speaking, a page still open. Watch the video appearing now. Let it whisper what your soul still needs to hear. Because this diary isn't finished, and neither are you.